You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with intern Michael and Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Buenos dias.
How you doing? Everybody. I did this again. I did it again. I'm so used to there only being two people in the studio that when we have more, I don't know what to say. So I apologize.
Well, we'll say good morning.
How are you gentlemen doing? Good.
Somebody has to be in charge.
Yeah.
Might as well be one of us.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who's got gas?
I don't know. I can't go there.
Drink some more coffee and then I'll answer your question, I think.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about something. I don't know how familiar that the two of you were with the general adaptive syndrome before I sent the article. Were you guys?
To me, again, and especially after having read the article, which I thought was fine, it's just a rehash and restatement of old thoughts under a new name.
Well, Selly, who started this work, this was back in the 1940s. So this was work that I think gets less talked about. And you're right, people repackage it. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is actually twofold. Number one is that the general adaptive syndrome is a very good biological explanation of how we experience stress and or anxiety, certain types of that. But number two is that we've seen so many examples of police shootings and all of these things that are going on. And one of the things that I don't hear being talked about, and I want to say up front, that I am not condoning shooting an unarmed man. I'm not condoning police brutality. None of these things are right and appropriate. They should be investigated. They should be stopped. But what I am saying is that if we look at the general adaptive syndrome, there are things biologically that are going on in the body of a human being that we can't expect to be turned off just because something changes in 3 seconds. And so that needs to be a part of what we look at. We need to look at the biology of the human being and talk about how do we incorporate that into the training that we are giving these individuals. And so then the second part of it for me is because when I worked at the EAP, we had the St. Louis Police Department contract. And so whenever there was a police shooting, we would have to do therapy with these gentlemen to get them back onto their job. And for therapists who are working with individuals in whatever capacity, whether they're first responders, they're riding the ambulance, whether they're going on to the, responding to fires or responding in police matters, this is something that therapists need to be aware of. This is the biological process that's happening in the human person. And so then when you are debriefing them, that needs to be something that you are cognizant of.
I think there are two parts to this, right? One is that in situations of shooting, people can go through all 5 stages of general adaptive syndrome, right? You're allowed to get to the exhaustive syndrome. Where I see a lot of popularity in culture and in academia right now is work by Robert Sapolsky, where he's talking about human beings not being allowed to get into that exhaustion syndrome, so they do further damage to their bodies. He calls it speciocentric stressors. This idea that only human beings can cognitively place themselves under such stress that it has a negative cortical response. I think that's interesting to consider. But you're absolutely right when it comes to law enforcement officers as well. That there are different psychologies and different biological underlyings for those psychologies in high-stress situations. One idea that comes to mind is the contagious shooter syndrome. The fact that other officers are much more likely to shoot if they hear one shot by an officer. So how do we make people aware of that bias through our training with law enforcement and the criminal justice system and progress forward?
I think we should go with the Barney Fife solution. You only get one bullet. No, I'm just joking.
Well,
so what's going on, Brett? What do you
I'm just thinking about the things you're saying, and I have incredible sympathy for a police officer in a high-risk situation, like a high-speed chase in traffic, where gunshots are fired somewhere by somebody, and you ultimately go through whatever you have to go through to get the car stopped, and the guy gets out of the car and he runs away, and you're adrenalized to the max because you've been driving high speed through traffic with potential gunshots, worry about somebody that you care about or know getting harmed or shot or killed or what have you, and worry about yourself. Am I going home today? You know, I got to do this job. Am I going home today? And then you get somebody who is running away, or you get somebody that's giving you lip or attitude when you stop them, and all of your human impulses try to break through whatever training you've had. And then I'm concerned about small town cops in America who don't get good training or don't get any training. They get a gun and a badge and they're told, okay, go get them. And they have whatever biases and prejudices and ignorance they bring to the job, in addition to a sense of responsibility and a need for courage. I mean, it's an impossible situation. So, you know, in some respects, it sounds like us just talking into the wind about ethereal intellectual concepts. It's a real world crisis that we need to have a way to explain so that police officers can embrace the concept that there's something worth obtaining. Like debriefing, therapy, talking to people that that aren't on the job, but expecting that those people can understand you and respect you and might be able to help you. Then the flip side of that is the guy who's in the car running away. You know, what are his adrenal responses? What's he going through? If I'm a black man and I'm being chased by a policeman, I'm thinking there's a 70% chance I'm not going to survive. So what does that do to my body, my attitude, my response? So it's a really complex.
And you've hit on exactly the point that I wanted to make with this whole topic, and that is that both individuals are experiencing exactly this kind of
physiological response.
And you know, I want to say up front, I believe in systemic racism. I'm not trying to say that there aren't biases on both sides of this equation. What I'm trying to say is, instead of talking about, oh, people are bad and trying to keep other people down, let's talk about what is the biology of what's going on here. How do we use that to inform us to be able to do things differently?
Inform us, but not limit us.
I
mean, like the young man that was killed last week did all the stupid things that he could possibly do to ensure his death. I mean, he put on a ski mask as he broke from a car and ran away from police. And contagion effect, he was shot 60 times, offering no threat, no immediate in-the-moment threat to the officers. He may have offered threat in terms of driving recklessly, trying to escape, driving dangerously, what have you, adrenalizing them in their response. How much of their response is power syndrome? I'm a white man with a gun, I'm in charge, how dare you challenge that authority? And
the psychology from the victim side. I mean, I understand that. He's running from the cops because he knows he's got a 70% chance of not going home tonight. He probably put on the ski mask, not, you know, because he's now trying to be a criminal.
We don't know.
But my guess is
stupid, whatever it was.
Well, because if he's probably thinking, okay, I got to, you know, protect my identity from the CCTV and all these cameras. And so
then is it a stolen car? Is it his car?
I don't know.
And then they found a gun in it. Was it a spare drop gun, or was it the gun that supposedly was fired from the car?
Or was there even shots fired from the car? We don't know.
Supposedly was fired.
But this is that's exactly the point that got me thinking about this. is, whether there were shots fired from the car or not. What I believe is that the policemen that state that they saw shots fired from the car believe that statement, and they will pass lie detector tests. In their perception of reality, they believed that happened, and that contributed to their actions.
But I also think, as a more fundamental concern, men, and I don't know about women, men who are drawn to police officer work.
Yeah.
Especially in the South, especially in rural communities, tend to be more macho dominant. And if you challenge their machismo, they want to physically beat you into submission. They want to take you and make you surrender and break you if they can. My father was one of those. He was a cop after World War II. He was a very violent man. At home and away from home, and whenever somebody challenged him, he wanted to break them down and beat them and or shoot them or whatever. And I don't know that I don't know, but I wonder, was he representative of a group? And can we do something about our selection process that hires these individuals?
And go ahead. You go ahead.
Beyond that, I think there's an exhibition of a response mode here, right? You're saying that these individuals are experiencing a low feeling of control and a low feeling of predictability. So that really puts them in high stress panic mode.
Absolutely.
So how can we, as therapists or as psychologists, as clinicians, train police officers that, one, right, their primary job is crisis response, and the first three steps of that crisis response are response to itself, so getting more information, containment of the situation, and de-escalation of the situation.
So they have to be trained to de-escalate a situation. They may also have to be trained to de-escalate themselves.
Right,
Correct.
and yes, and that's the part, the self-soothing and the kind of
Because every cop
self-care.
anywhere knows that the single most dangerous call is a domestic call.
Right. So how do we move them? We can't really change the predictability of the situation. Any of these situations are going to be low predictability. But maybe we can change the level of control law enforcement feels over their situation. So we move them out of panic and into defense mode.
Well, another good example, last week's 4th of July parade. When the cops caught that guy, they asked him to please kneel on the ground. And he did. Now, he wasn't physically resisting at that point, but those guys were trained differently than what I've seen before. They didn't just blow him away. They didn't jump on top of him and punch him and tase him and beat him. They didn't kneel on his neck.
But was that because he was a white individual?
Don't know.
I mean, and we don't know.
That's and was it because he adopted a submissive attitude from the minute they stopped him?
Yeah. So, but when we talk about the idea of solutions, to me, there are two real qualities to that I'm not sure we have any control over. The first one is that we have to start to think in our society about what are the things that we believe are truly important, right? Should you be making billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars a year as a hedge fund manager when a policeman is making $32,000 a year? And if we increase the amount of money that we invest in those social goods, do we then draw from a larger pool of qualified individuals?
So, in the last 15 years, the federal government, as I don't know how I correlate the time frames, but one of the things that they have done is arm local police departments with military caliber weapons, tanks, anti-personnel machines, riot control machines, and there's the law of the hammer. You know the law of the hammer. If you give a 3-year-old a hammer, everything is a nail. Right. And so they have this equipment. They want to use it, and they want to have a SWAT team. Uvalde had a SWAT team. SWAT team didn't respond. Right.
Well,
didn't show up.
The guy that was
they were only part time.
That was there and had the bead on the perpetrator was waiting for approval that he never got, and so then missed the shot. Right. So you're hitting on my second point, which is we have to have some kind of realistic conversation about the proliferation of.
So let me come back and finish my thought.
Okay.
Well, I was saying, because you were talking about funding.
Yeah. Funding individuals, so paying them more money.
Paying individuals more money, yes. Not giving departments more
Yeah.
money to spend on fun toys and
Right.
gadgets. The ability to track your cell phone, the ability to break the encryption, all of those kind of things cost money as well. And that's where the money that we give police departments tends to be going, and to administrative level responses. But in the city of St. Louis, 9-minute wait for an emergency call to be answered by the police department. They have two separate systems, one for police, one for fire, which makes no sense at all. So you got to call the right people, and then you have to wait because they don't pay the people answering the phone. They haven't upgraded the computers. They don't know what how to prioritize and respond to the calls. And so people are dying because they can't get an answer from a 911 call. So if you're talking about investing money, or are you talking about paying? I mean, what's the best use of the money? Pay those people more salary, more for training, more for equipment.
That's what I'm saying. We have to have that conversation.
So leadership is another question here. Why?
Absolutely.
Why is money going to? These toys are fun, right?
Yeah.
These are fun toys. Encryption breaking tanks. These are toys.
Yeah.
The very real toys with very real consequences. What if we ran police departments like we run tech corporations, where when we have an influx of money, we prioritize things that will garner responses?
So hang on, let's take our break and let's come back and pick that point up.
And then we'll garner a response.
Right.
One hopes.
Hey everybody, Dr. Michael Mahan here from Psych with Mike, and I couldn't be more excited to talk to you about Athletic Greens, which is a new sponsor we have here on the show. I started taking Athletic Greens, watching some YouTube videos and doing my own research. I wanted to add something to my daily workout program to give me some energy and to support gut health. And that was the one thing that kept coming up again and again with Athletic Greens is the guy who started the company did a bunch of research because he was having some gut health issues that he couldn't get any resolution for. He developed Athletic Greens and it's just exploded from there. So it's 75 superfoods, vitamins, minerals, probiotics, whole food sources that's all in one daily scoop. You put it in 8 or 12 ounces of water, you shake it up and you drink it. The taste is very, very drinkable. I actually enjoy it. And I have been using it and my energy levels have just been through the roof. I really like Athletic Greens because of some of the sustainability things that they do. So they buy carbon credits and, to help protect the rainforest, which is something that I really like. But if you order Athletic Greens in your subscription, you're gonna also get a year's supply of their vitamin D supplementation and 5 free travel packs. And that vitamin D is so important during those winter months when we're not getting enough sunlight. We've talked about how that decreases your mood and increases depression, and that can be a real deal changer. So you go to athleticgreens.com/emerging. That's athleticgreens.com/EMERGING. That's the Psych with Mike promo, and you're going to get that additional vitamin D support for a year and 5 free travel packs. So take control of your own health today. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.
Okay, we're back. So you were talking about if we somehow created, and whether it was an algorithm or not, but some kind of checklist that graded the way in which the police were delivering their services, and we did that more like it was a privatized institution, would that create a different outcome?
Well, we do have a checklist of a theoretical societal checklist of requirements that we have for police officers, and we or for police departments, and we enact that through democratic voting. Vote for those people to put them into those positions based off of a feeling of how good or bad they are performing. So I question whether or not that's an effective method sometimes. is there a better way to do that? Can we, as a society, hire better leaders and pay them more?
Well,
Can we hire the CEO of a criminal justice department?
Yeah,
And
I mean,
some larger cities do that.
Yeah,
For
and-
instance, the Chicago Police Department does this, where they do bring in consultants from business and from industrial and organizational psychology backgrounds to take a look at their police department and find, where are my holes? Where can I be using my funding better?
So I appreciate your thinking. I don't know that I agree with it. And the comparative basis that I have for saying that is, as a school teacher, every year
Right.
my school district would hire expensive outside consultants to come in and have faculty meetings for the district teachers all together. And those people would tell us how to be better teachers, how to better manage our classroom. And I'm sitting out in the crowd, and all the people I'm sitting near are scoffing under their breath, saying, this is a complete waste of time. I need to be in my room getting my bulletin boards ready. I need to be going over my student lists. I need to be making lesson plans. Why am I listening to this bozo? He's not in a classroom in this district. He doesn't know what I deal with. And I think that police officers would be similar.
Yep.
You haven't been under fire. You haven't been under fire in my city.
Right.
I don't know. And then you have, within the context of the police officers in St. Louis, you have the Black Police Officers Union, the White Police Officers Union, the General Police Officers Union, and then you have the administrative system. So,
And so my first point is, if we had a different financial structure and we actually invested in the things that we believed as a society were important, I'm a big advocate of that. I know that that's a heavy lift. My second point is that if the police had some way of being able to know, if I see a gun, that's a bad guy. Right now, you don't know that because the proliferation of guns is so ubiquitous. Everybody gets to have a gun. Everybody gets to carry a gun openly. And so now, whenever the police show up, they always have to assume that there's a gun. They always have to assume that that could be potentially used against them. If we had fewer guns, if we had a real conversation about how we want guns to be seen or used in our society, we don't have that conversation. The only conversation we have is, you have a Second Amendment right to have a gun, and so we have no restrictions on it.
the only thing they say two things: thoughts and prayers, Second Amendment. But there are some new things being done, even in the St. Louis area, which involves sending trained
Mental health professionals.
mental health professionals, thank you, on calls that are potentially violent, and having those people supported by an armed police officer, but not have an armed cop have to be the answer to everything.
Absolutely.
So you don't have the law of the hammer in operation as efficiently as you historically have had.
Yeah.
The other thing I love about this new initiative that St. Louis is really taking forward is the idea of involving community leaders in these calls as well. We're not only trying to send the right professional to the right call, but we're also looking at church leaders or neighborhood watch leaders or people who are in their community, who know their people, and who can effectively say, yes, that person's a danger to themselves and others right now. This is what they need. They do need armed police response. Or no, that person is unhoused and mentally unwell. They are being a disturbance, but they're not violent. And maybe they just need a visit from a social worker.
Absolutely. And the police know now, they're able to know where the concentration of danger is, where the concentration of gunfire and shots and killings are in the community. And so they know some neighborhoods it's extremely rare and highly unlikely that that's what we're going to be facing. In other neighborhoods, that's almost exactly what we're going to be facing. So if you get the right combination of public servants who can do their jobs, you have a better opportunity. But you still don't have and I don't know that there is a universal answer. But we take one step at a time and try to address it.
Let's bring this, for the time we got remaining, let's bring this back to a clinical discussion. So when we have this particular police officer who is involved in a shooting and he's got to be debriefed before he can be cleared to go back into service, what should the therapist be doing to address that man in that room? Or that person, I should say, in that room?
First, you have to evaluate the mental state of the individual.
Okay.
Are they consenting to feedback at this point, right? Are they okay?
Well, and that's a good point. So if a person is in a position to not hear what you're saying, it doesn't matter what you say.
Wasted breath.
Right.
Well, and as a clinician, one of the things that you have heard from clients is, have you been through my experience? Were you sexually abused? Were you abused at all? Were you an alcoholic? Have you ever been in prison? Then how can you advise me? If you haven't had that experience, you can't advise me. Cops are going to have the same reaction.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know, because I've done it. But, and then people say that all the time about substance abuse. Well, if you've never abused a drug.
If you haven't been raped, you can't help me here.
And what I say to people is this. You're correct. I've never experienced what you experienced, but what I know is there are 4 primary human emotions that every human being has, and I have those emotions. I know how those emotions get triggered. I know what it feels like to be
So
scared.
I hear that as an argument, and I quit listening. I don't want to hear it.
Okay.
I would want you to defuse my hostility, and if you rebut me, that isn't diffusing me.
Okay.
So how do you show empathy through that? How do you forward your empathy so that that diffusion and that understanding can take place?
I think you use reflective listening. I hear what you're saying. You think I don't know enough to be able to be helpful to you. Can you tell me more? What would be helpful to you? If I did know enough, what could I say? I'm not challenging you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I certainly confess that I've not been in that situation or walked in your shoes. But I want to know, can you talk to me? And you just get them to talk. And as they do that, windows open. That's what therapy is about. That's how it works.
As those windows open, I think those are your opportunities
Yes.
for training.
Absolutely.
Right? We talk about, in crisis intervention and crisis response, we talk about using transactional analysis to look at different situations and respond in different ways, right? Can we do open-ended questions? Can we do minimal encouragements and paraphrasing?
Right. Absolutely. All those things help. And so much of it in a crisis especially is like blah, blah, ginger. It's just background noise conversation while you wait for a window to open. And then when the window opens, you seize that moment for connection, for tension reduction. And the key term that I use is reflective listening. If you feel like I hear you and understand you, you calm down.
And imagine if we required police officers, well, one, if we paid them more, and 2, if we required a 4-year degree, and part of that 4-year degree was counseling or therapy.
I mean, I think that's a way to think about it, but I'm not sure that I want my law enforcement officers to be therapists. I don't know I mean, because those are 2 different specialties. And I think there is a place for law enforcement, and I think there is a place for therapy. That's why I like the idea of therapists working in conjunction with the police department, because I think those are 2 different things. Like, I wouldn't want a therapist to get training as a police officer. I don't necessarily want my
your
police
teachers
officers
to have guns.
No, not ideally. I want there to be fewer guns, not more guns, but that puts me in a certain segment of the population.
I even saw that a Republican politician in Texas the other day was suggesting we should arm students.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. How young?
I quit listening.
If they get their heritage card?
I was doing some confirmation bias research, and I changed channels.
Yeah, that seems like a recipe for disaster. But, I need to be able to hear that person's point of view and say I respectfully disagree, and here's why.
One hopes.
Yeah. So going back to this idea of the policeman in the room, my concern always was, when I was working with law enforcement, is that they are very, very resistant to the idea of self-care. That they hear that as a weakness, as a personal failure. They should be able to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. They should be able to be stopped.
But you also don't acknowledge that police spend their days dealing with the dregs of humanity. the human condition in its most negative form. And that's poisonous. And so over time, not just in the moment of a crisis, somebody goes into a building where the shots have been fired and bodies laying on the ground, but just ordinary everyday moments. You deal with corruption, you deal with hostility, you deal with viciousness, victimization, wounded people of all kinds of wounds. And it poisons you if you don't have a way to get rid of that or reframe that every day that you go to work. So I think when we talk about counseling for police officers or training, I think part of the conceptualization of a training module involves how do we prevent them from getting poisoned by the negativity of humanity that they experience every day on the job.
And they do that through self-care. That's the only way that you can do it. You have to do something else to, number one, detoxify yourself, but number two, then replace that with positive energy that makes you feel recharged and rejuvenated. And I in my own personal experience, that's a hard sell to
hill to climb.
Yeah. And so, and I want to say up front, I have no idea what police officers go through on a daily basis. I've never been a police officer, and so I don't have that experience. But what I would be interested in is if there are police officers who are listening to this, is for them to inform us what would they find beneficial to hear from someone when they are in those debrief sessions, or even if they just sought therapy on their own, which is rare but could happen. What would be beneficial for them to hear in that area of self-care? What's language that would be less cause them to put up less likely to cause them to put up a wall, more likely to be impactful and language that they could hear in that realm of self-care? Because I don't know what it is. Because I don't know what their life is like. So I do what I normally do, and I don't know if that's effective.
Great question.
So hopefully those musings were beneficial for somebody out there. I thought we got a little bit passionate and fired up about it, so I think we had a good time. But the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. As always, we would love it if you would go to Apple Podcasts, find Psych with Mike, and leave us a comment and a rating. But mostly what we really like is for people to go to the YouTubes and subscribe to the channel there. That's really, really helpful. So that's Psych with Mike on YouTube. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.